Starmer usually survives by shutting people down and talking over them, but when someone finally pushes back, the moment can flip fast, and this one did exactly that. Instead of control, what followed was pure discomfort, and it showed in real time. Normally, Labour reacts like kids caught cutting corners. Lots of outrage, quick excuses, and finger-pointing everywhere. But this time, Starmer picked the wrong person to spar with. Reform UK's Lee Anderson didn't just challenge him, he went straight at him on the Parliament floor, and Starmer froze up, looking completely thrown off. Lee Anderson's remarks landed hard and sharp, so much so that Starmer's frustration was written all over his face, yet no solid reply came out. He tried to regroup, tried to regain the upper hand, but the moment had already slipped away.
I come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions, and I expect sensible answers. But all I get is glazed expressions and waffle, and from the opposite benches.
That single pointed exchange cracked open serious questions about Starmer's green agenda, raised alarms over billions of pounds, and left many wondering how someone who claims economic rigour and scientific brilliance could look so unprepared under pressure. He didn't dodge that question because he was confused. He dodged it because telling the truth would have shattered the polished illusion behind his so-called net zero dream.
Come to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, every week to ask sensible questions, and I expect sensible answers. But all I get is glazed expressions and waffle, and from the opposite benches. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Prime Minister a very simple question. On behalf of all the net zero sceptics, if we became net zero tomorrow, by how much would it reduce the Earth's temperature by? Simple question.
When the moment demanded real facts, hard figures, or even one solid number, he came up completely empty. Instead of answering, he swerved and started throwing cheap shots at Lee Anderson. He dragged Nigel Farage into it and leaned on a painfully childish jab, mocking Farage for wanting to be Prime Minister, sneering that he couldn't even run a party small enough to fit in the back of a taxi. That line wasn't clever, it was embarrassing. It was one of the most disappointing and honestly insulting responses many people have seen in Parliament.
Minister. Mr. Speaker, net zero is of course not easy, but it's a huge opportunity to boost our growth, our jobs and our economy. And so he knows my views on that. But you know, he complains that our better ideas if they stop fawning over Putin. And I understand the member for Clacton wants to be Prime Minister. He can't even lead a party that fits in the back of a taxi.
There was no answer there, and definitely no leadership on display. What we got instead was straight political cowardice dressed up as humour. No science, no data, no substance, just a smug grin and lazy one-liners that clearly came from advisors who think sarcasm can hide reality. And that reality is rough. People are struggling to heat their homes. Disabled individuals are watching their support shrink. And instead of solutions, they're being served jokes and deflections. Let's keep it real. If a Prime Minister can't clearly explain how a massive environmental policy will actually change the planet's temperature, something is seriously off. That's not a small detail. That's the whole point of the policy. Either the plan isn't what it's being sold as, or the PM isn't being straight with the public. One way or another, someone is getting misled, and it's definitely not the climate. Here's the part they don't like talking about. The UK is responsible for roughly 1% of global emissions, and even if the country went fully carbon neutral overnight, no cars, no factories, no lights, nothing, the projected impact on global temperatures by 2100 would be less than 0.01 degrees Celsius. That's not spin, that's math. That's the uncomfortable truth Starmer keeps dodging because admitting it would blow up the whole pitch. Billions spent, entire industries shaken up, and public support trimmed down hard. Yet the climate barely notices, and while Labour keeps pouring money into this green fantasy, it's quietly pulling support from people who need it most. Winter fuel payments get cut, disability support gets reduced, and personal independence payments take a hit, all while families are told this sacrifice is somehow worth it. Vulnerable people are being left to suffer through brutal winters, while the government throws massive subsidies at offshore wind farms that stop delivering the moment the wind drops. That's not progress. It's ideology being put ahead of real lives. Plain and simple, dressing hardship up in a green ribbon doesn't magically turn it into compassion.
Most members of this House will be aware that the welfare system can be a nightmare to navigate and does indeed need reform. But could we have less of this rhetoric about his £5 billion package of disability benefit so-called reform being moral. There is nothing moral about cutting benefits for what may be up to 1 million people. This is not about morality. This is about the Treasury's wish to balance the country's books on the back of the most vulnerable and poor people in this society.
Quick pause though. Are you feeling this breakdown so far? If you are, hit like, share it around, and don't forget to subscribe for more no-nonsense updates on the major shifts shaking British politics right now. Now back to the story, because let's be real, this is starting to feel like a full-on con. Starmer and the Labour Party keep making big flashy promises to win over climate activists, but deep down, they know these targets don't add up. Worse than that, there's no serious or credible plan showing how any of it actually gets delivered. And every time Starmer is asked a straight, serious question about Britain's energy policy, he dodges again. No clarity, no numbers, no explanation. Instead, he goes straight for smears, accusing critics of being Russian sympathizers. That's where the debate has sunk to. Question Labour's extreme net zero plans, and suddenly you're labelled a Putin apologist. Raise concerns about rising energy bills and you're branded anti-science. It's childish, it's manipulative, and it's dangerous, especially as Starmer looks more rattled every time the pressure is turned up.
Let's face it, I mean, I had this argument with somebody out in Baku earlier in the week. You know, we've reduced our emissions by between 42 and 50% over the last 10 to 20 years, and it hasn't made any difference at all to the climate, and it hasn't made any difference at all to the carbon emissions of the world. In fact, in every other place, it's going up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Britain is going to look quite ridiculous if our economy goes on shrinking in years to come. The Americans have been growing really quite quickly because despite Mr. Biden's best attempts, the American economy is much stronger than ours and has kept growing. And I think we can probably expect that Mr. Trump will accelerate that growth. So, they are all, what isn't it? Mississippi now is the poorest state in the US is now wealthier
Yes.
than anywhere in the UK. I mean,
Right.
it's just, this is madness how far we're dropping behind. And as you say, it's making no difference to the climate at all.
We get jokes about taxis and made-up links between Reform UK and the Kremlin, while real people are stuck paying the price. British families are being squeezed out of heating their homes, energy bills keep climbing, steel mills are shutting down, and workers are watching jobs disappear. And through all of this, the Prime Minister still can't answer the most basic question about his own energy plan. That's not leadership, it's not science, and it's definitely not strategy. It's ideological chaos dressed up with slick PR lines and media-friendly slogans. Starmer has no solid plan, no real data to back it up, and no straight talk at all. What we see instead is a mix of slogans, insults, and a green crusade that's pushing Britain toward a colder, poorer, and more frustrated future. And what he refuses to say matters just as much as what he does.
So, Charlotte, you've seen the pathetic response from Sir Keir Starmer. He's not here to defend himself, but it wasn't a response at all. Either he couldn't answer the question or he knew the answer and was too embarrassed to give the answer. Is net zero killing us?
I think it's the second one. I think he's too embarrassed to admit that net zero isn't working. I can't believe he's still peddling this idea that it's a boost to the economy, even as evidence points in the exact opposite direction. We're seeing job losses in factories because factories are too expensive to run. It's really affecting the working people, while people in Westminster are sneering, the Ed Miliband sneering, virtue signalling, the net zero zealots. But what it's actually doing is affecting people with jobs in factories, which is completely opposite end of the scale. I just don't think they take into account these people. And I think the fact that Kemi Badenoch this week sort of wrote it off, it says all we need to say, really, doesn't it?
Labour's net zero agenda, heavily pushed by Ed Miliband, comes with a jaw-dropping annual price tag of around £28 billion, and that number keeps creeping up. Meanwhile, essential support like winter fuel help, pensioner assistance, disability support, and aid for struggling families gets trimmed down. Funny how the green agenda stays protected while everything else takes the hit. Under Labour, winter fuel payments are getting trimmed back, disability support like PIP is being frozen or tightly restricted, and welfare spending is being cut by more than £6 billion. All of that is happening while massive sums are poured into vague green projects that still haven't shown clear results or real wins. Even Starmer's own team quietly admits the pressure isn't easing up.
Net zero by 2050 is impossible. I don't say that with pleasure. I want a better future and a better environment for our children, but we have to get real. Anyone who has done any serious analysis knows it cannot be achieved without a significant drop in our living standards, or worse, by bankrupting us. Responsible leaders don't indulge in fictions which are going to make families poorer or mortgage their children's future. Without the rest of the world doing the same, we are making our country less safe, less secure, and less resilient.
Britain is still facing higher tariffs, stubborn inflation, and rising costs across the board. That means the economic squeeze isn't some short-term bump, it's sticking around. So while Labour drops billions on wind turbines and carbon credits, ordinary Britons are left dealing with brutal energy bills, shrinking support, and an economy stretched thin. That's the everyday reality people are feeling right now. Starmer's promise to fully decarbonise the UK's electricity grid by 2030 isn't just ambitious, it's straight up unrealistic.
Nigel Farage.
Well, it depends what those climate policies are. And at the moment, we're pursuing completely unrealistic climate policies. I mean, the Labour pledge to decarbonise the grid by 2030 will not happen, just as the Conservative pledge to decarbonise the grid by 2035 will not happen. Not only is it impossible, it's actually unaffordable. So we have to be grown up and sensible. If we get new technologies that give us cheaper energy or better ways of manufacturing things, that's great. But what we're doing in this country is we're sacrificing economic growth. We've been massacring British manufacturing. And we say to ourselves, isn't it marvellous? We've reduced carbon emissions more than any other Western country, but we haven't. All we've done is to export carbon emissions when our steelworks go to India, or our car manufacture moves to China, or to Turkey, or wherever it is. We're living in a complete fool's paradise.
And that's not just critics saying it. Gary Smith, leader of the GMB union and one of Labour's own allies, has openly admitted it can't be done, and he's not wrong. The truth is simple. The grid isn't ready, the infrastructure isn't there, and pretending otherwise just sets people up for more disruption, more costs, and more frustration down the line. And this is where the cracks really start to show. You can't promise a full energy overhaul on a tight deadline when the basics aren't even in place, power lines aren't upgraded, storage capacity is lagging behind, and planning approvals move at a crawl, yet the promises keep flying.
We're tying ourselves in knots over net zero. Oh my God, isn't it awful? Look at what we're doing to the world. Well, look at this tweet from Narendra Modi. He's the PM of India, fighting for re-election, boasting that India this year will produce 1 billion tons of coal. That's what they're going to mine this year. And then look at the all-time graph for CO2 emissions, and you'll see even the Industrial Revolution was barely a blip compared to what is going on now. Why should we put money on electricity bills? Why should we be importing oil, gas, many other things, when frankly, we are irrelevant? If climate change is a problem, tell you what, we're not even a part of it. Look at the numbers.
Energy experts have warned again and again that rushing this kind of transition without solid groundwork risks instability and higher costs. That's not scare talk, that's common sense. When supply can't keep up with demand, prices jump and regular households feel it first. What makes this worse is the silence. Instead of being honest about delays, trade-offs, and limits, the messaging stays glossy and vague. Big words, soft details, and zero accountability. Workers in energy-heavy industries are left in limbo, unsure if their jobs even exist a few years from now. Communities that depend on those industries feel ignored, brushed aside like collateral damage in a grand experiment. This isn't about being against cleaner energy, it's about realism. If the plan can't be explained clearly, can't be backed with hard timelines, and can't protect people through the transition, then it's not leadership. It's a gamble being played with other people's lives and livelihoods. And when people start asking fair questions, the response isn't clarity, it's pressure and labeling. Instead of laying out timelines or costs in plain terms, critics get waved off like they're the problem. That's not transparency, that's shutdown tactics. Behind the scenes, councils, energy firms, and local planners are scrambling. Deadlines don't line up, supply chains don't match the hype, and approvals drag on forever. Yet the public messaging stays loud and confident, like everything's already handled. This gap between talk and reality is where trust breaks down. You can't sell certainty while operating on guesswork. People notice when promises sound clean, but execution looks messy. Households are told to tighten belts and do their part, while policy rollouts feel rushed and half-built. That frustration stacks up fast, especially when answers never come straight. What makes it worse is the tone. Instead of respect, people get brushed aside with buzzwords and lectures. No one likes being talked down to, especially when they're the ones paying higher bills.
Prime Minister, the Bank of England's just cut interest rates, but it's also halved growth for 2025 forecast and raised the inflation forecast and said employers' national insurance hike will raise prices and hit jobs more than expected. It's a poor verdict on your budget and bad news for your growth plan. You must be really disappointed.
Well, what I think is significant today is that the interest rates have come down. That's the third cut in interest rates since July. That is really important because that means more money in people's pockets. Of course, wages are going up higher than inflation. Again, more money in people's pockets. But we're never going to turn around the economy in just 6 or 7 months. It was always going to take time. There's more to do. And that's why the announcement we're making today about nuclear, which is moving this on significantly to small modular reactors, getting again to the front of the queue in the world on that, making sure that can be done elsewhere across the country. So AI, data centres and nuclear can come together. This is hugely important. That means lots of investment into our country, which is then measured in jobs. So when it comes to growth...
They said that your NI is going to cut jobs. They said the NI hike will cut jobs.
At some point, accountability has to kick in. If the plan is solid, explain it clearly. If it's not ready, say that too. Anything else just fuels doubt and keeps people wondering who's really being looked out for here. And here's the part that really sticks with people. Trust doesn't vanish overnight. It erodes when leaders keep dodging, spinning, and talking past the public. When answers are needed most, silence and sarcasm take their place. People aren't asking for miracles, they're asking for straight talk. How much will this cost? Who pays first? What happens if it falls behind schedule? Those are fair questions, yet they keep getting treated like troublemaking. Instead, everything is framed as believe us politics. Big promises, small details, and a constant push to move on before anyone looks too closely. That approach doesn't build confidence, it builds suspicion. Communities feel like they're being experimented on without a say, workers feel exposed, families feel stretched, and when frustration rises, it gets brushed off as ignorance rather than concern. This is how the disconnect grows. Leaders talk progress, while households feel pressure. They talk vision, while people see risk. Until that gap is addressed honestly, the doubts won't fade, they'll multiply. Because when leadership won't explain the hard parts, people start wondering what else is being left out. Here's where it fully falls apart. There simply aren't enough undersea cables to move offshore wind power to where it's actually needed. And when it comes to storage, the UK is nowhere near ready. Right now, large-scale energy storage can barely keep the country running for about an hour. And that's being generous. And it gets worse. The government's latest auction for new offshore wind projects completely flopped. Not a single company even put in a bid. That says a lot. Investors are clearly uneasy, the market feels shaky, and confidence is slipping fast. Yet Labour keeps clinging to this 2030 target like it's untouchable. When people ask the obvious question, how is this actually supposed to work? There's nothing but silence. As Lee Anderson pointed out, whenever Labour gets cornered, they don't explain, they don't debate, and they don't defend their policies with facts. They just talk louder, shut down discussion, and try to shame anyone who dares to challenge them. So that's the real picture. If this breakdown helped connect the dots, hit like, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe for more straight-up breakdowns like this, and I'll see you in the next video.